Hello and welcome. The time is 5 p.m., the date is Monday, April 20th, and this is CGS ESPN Second Take, the sporty conversation you never knew you needed. My name is Bryn Masback, and I'll be co-hosting Second Take tonight with my two wonderful colleagues, Dylan George and Justin Vaymow. Today, we're excited here at CGS ESPN to bring you the second part of our special COVID-19 edition. If you're just joining us now for the first time, well, you missed a lot. But your three hosts are spread out across the country, shooting this episode live in studio but physically separated. And we're eager tonight to bring you a second selection of stories and arguments today on what's happening in the sporting world during COVID-19. We'll also be revisiting a number of the hottest and most debated questions in sporting lore. So please sit back on your Monday afternoon and enjoy our light but productive banter as we satiate your need for sporty conversation in a trying time for sports fans around the world. And as we always say here at Second Take, when you play ball, leave it all. That's it for my intro. Let's get to the program.
While the NBA season might appear to be in tatters, the players, coaches, and especially us here at CGS ESPN Second Take still have hopes for a finished season. For our next segment, your host will give you their take on a potential dark horse, a team that will come out of nowhere to take home the NBA championship.
Okay, well, I'll start right off for us here, Dylan. If you're joining us here for our last episode, you heard me talk a lot about the Pacers in regards to one of their potential signings of Aaron Baines. Well, if you'll remember that discussion, I talked a lot about the strengths of the Pacers, and it's many of those same strengths that will put the Pacers in a prime position to be an NBA champion if the season does resume. So let's review some of those reasons. Number one, the Pacers are sort of in a rebuilding stage. One of their star players, Victor Oladipo, who really brought them close to an NBA championship victory in 2018, is now back. He had a few games to get back into shape, and he's now using his time off during this hiatus to get completely back in shape, both mentally and physically. And he said publicly that he's ready to take the league by storm when he comes back. And that bodes really well for the Pacers because he can dominate a series. The second reason why the Pacers are well positioned to dominate the championships are because of the format of the new championships. The format is still very much up in the air, but the NBA League of Governors is considering a format that would do away with the traditional 7-game series and just play a 1-game winners take all format in the middle 2 rounds of the playoffs. And that bodes well for a team like the Pacers, who are more likely to win it all in 1 or 2 games and carry that momentum forward than have to beat a team like the Bucks in 7 games. So that's another reason why the Pacers are well positioned to do well. On the topic, however, back to my first topic about rebuilding, the Pacers also have a number of other players who are now just getting over injuries. And so looking at, for example, 538's model tracking the current roster versus the optimum roster, the Pacers throughout the entire season, 2019-2020 season, have been playing below their optimal levels because of injuries. And so, again, this time off will allow them to not be together, but to get physically fit during their time off. Finally, the Pacers are a really well-rounded team this year. Maybe they don't have 1 or 2 stars, although, again, Oladipo could be a star for them, but they also have really great playmakers across the board, from Sabonis to Brogdon to Warren, even Turner Miles or whatever his name is. They have a lot of players that can put points on the board, a lot of great outside shooters, and also ability to penetrate inside the paint. And so all that bodes really well for them. And the combination of players getting into form, their well-rounded team, and the fact that they're positioned to do well based off this new playoff format, all that puts them in a great position going into the potential playoff season.
The Pacers could be a good dark horse contender, but I think if you look at the Celtics, they're much more convincing of a dark horse contender. While they may not fit the build as a dark horse, as they're the 3rd seed in the East right now, I still think people are overlooking them because people still see the Bucks as the overwhelming favorites to represent the Eastern Conference. To see why they're they should be a favorite. You have to look at the other teams in the East. None of them 1 through 8 have are playoff proven. The Bucks' 2 series victories last year were against Detroit, who haven't won a playoff game since 2008, and the Celtics last year, who had well-documented locker issues. The Raptors lost a top 5 player in Kawhi Leonard, as well as one of their best weapons in Danny Green. This Heat team has yet to be seen in the postseason, and the Pacers haven't had much playoff success with Oladipo, given that he was injured last year. The 76ers are a total mess, and the Nets don't have Kevin Durant or Kyrie Irving yet. The Celtics have fixed their locker room problems by shipping out Kyrie, and outside of the Bucks, have arguably the best roster in the Eastern Conference. Their starting lineup is absolutely loaded with talent, with Kemba Walker and Jaylen Brown, a Gordon Hayward who's finally getting his legs back under him after that horrific injury a couple years ago, Jason Tatum, who is looking like someday he could possibly be the best player in the NBA, and Daniel Tice. They've also got Enes Kanter, who can come off the bench and give you 8 and 8, as well as defensive specialist Marcus Smart. And they also have the NBA legend himself, Taco Fall, 7'6" legend. And that's my take.
Okay, obviously I don't agree with the aspersions you were casting on the Pacers. Oladipo is going to be the next big star, but people love to dream. People love to have big aspirations, and that's just what you're doing tonight. So I respect that.
Nice.
Yeah. All right. I think I'll take the reins from you guys, and I think you guys mentioned the 3rd and 5th teams in the East. I'm just gonna split right in between you guys and go for the 4th team. My dark horse team is the Miami Heat, and I'll give you guys. Justin said they're not playoff proven, but I'll start off. I'll just say they're very well proven against the top teams in the East. They've gone. Granted, they haven't played all of their games. They have gone 2-0 against the Bucks, 2-0 against the Raptors, 2-0 against the Pacers, 3-1 against the 76ers and Magic, and 2-1 against the Nets. Now, the only team that they haven't beaten was the Celtics, but they still had 2 games left against them. Now, they throughout the course of the season, they have 5 losses total at home, and 2 of those were against LA teams. The Lakers and Clippers were obviously favorites to win the championship. And so this is a new Heat team compared to last year. They gained Jimmy Butler and they lost Hassan Whiteside, even though I would argue that losing Hassan Whiteside was really a gain in the long run for them. I think he brought a negative culture to their team. I think he was kind of toxic to their coach. And I think overall losing him and adding Jimmy Butler was a big plus for them. And I think most importantly, they have an identity. Eric Spoelstra can play Kelly Olynyk and Bam Adebayo without worrying about Hassan Whiteside. They have 2 new flashy and, possible contenders for Rookie of the Year and Tyler Hero and Kendrick Nunn. Tyler Hero, I've watched his highlights since high school. He is a baller. He was one of the best players in the country in college at Kentucky, and I think him and Kendrick Nunn they have proved that they can hang around with the big guys in the NBA. And I think the atmosphere that while they're the 4th seed, they may only have one home advantage during the playoffs. I think the atmosphere in Miami is insane. I think that their special jerseys, the Miami Vice jerseys, kind of prove the new identity that Miami has. The bright blue and pink. I think that really shows that this is a new team. This is a flashy team, and I think they've proved themselves against the competition in the East. And unlike the Pacers, who Britt mentioned, they in the new format where they would only have to play 1 game, they can steal a few from the top teams. The Heat have proved themselves against the teams in the East. They're 2-0 against the top 2 teams right now, and I think that they could really, if they hit a new gear and they really step it up in the playoffs, I think that they could go all the way.
Sorry if you heard me typing there, Dylan. I was trying to cover up the sound of you making some wild claims about Kendrick Nunn being ready for the playoffs. He won't stand a chance. He'll crack at the first sign of any pressure. That's my prediction.
Wow.
I would like to contend that I think the playoffs are certainly different than regular season basketball. The refs are known to swallow their whistles more. And
Mm.
the fact is that the Miami Heat shoot the fourth most free throws per game in the NBA, and that's going to drop significantly when the playoffs start. You kind of have to ask yourselves if Jimmy Butler is good enough to lead a team by him. Well, not by himself. He has some good help, but as the best player, is he able to lead his team past other teams that are more proven, like the Bucks and the Celtics? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you raise a good point with free throws, but I think free throws, the Bucks shoot 25 free throws a game, and I think even if the refs swallow their whistles, that means maybe 5 or 10 less calls per game. That's like maybe 5 to 10 less free throws, and I think that really isn't a deciding factor in the games in the long run, because I think even if 2 free throws won't be taken early on, those points can still be scored later on in the game. And I think that overall, this team can definitely step up in a playoff atmosphere and really take on even playoff-proven teams like the Bucks or the Raptors.
Well, fellas, it sounds like what both teams need, but especially Miami, is maybe some automatic reviews for all plays. Wouldn't that really help the Miami team?
It's an excellent.
I thought you were
Always looking to score political points here.
That's an excellent point, Britt.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Okay, well, let's move on. Okay, next we turn to the wonderful world of college sports and the well-debated question of whether college athletes should be paid or have the opportunity to be paid. As recently as mid-February of this year, before the coronavirus became a serious issue in the United States, this exact question was being asked by senators in a special committee reviewing possible federal legislation on the issue. You also may have heard of California legislation that is also answering this question, and in that case, looking to pay athletes for their participation in school sports. Now, a little more background. All the way back in 1910, when the NCAA was officially formed as a national conference, there was a major emphasis on the idea of amateurism. Back then, things were even stricter than they are now, as players were not only prohibited from receiving any compensation or sponsorship, they were also prohibited from receiving any type of sports-based scholarship or other incentive to attend a given university. Later, the scholarship rule changed, but the focus on keeping college athletes sheltered from the world of professional sports continued. In 1951, then NCAA President Walter Byers coined the term student athlete, which many of our fans today are probably aware of. And that made it clear that the NCAA did not sanction any attempts by universities to treat their students as professionals. Today, things are structurally largely the same, and pursuant to Bylaw 12 of the NCAA Codebook, student athletes still cannot receive any type of compensation for their athletic participation or persona, past the cost of attendance and a $5,000 stipend for other college-related expenses. So, folks, what do you have to say?
All right. I don't think college athletes should be paid. Now I'm going to focus more on the college basketball side of things, because that's what I'm more familiar with. First off, a lot of them get scholarships, which in itself is a form of payment. Second, college sports were made to serve the education, not the other way around. The NCAA was never made to be a sports development league. Sure, since pretty much forever, top NBA prospects have come from college, but they all generally stuck around for more than a single year. This is because they wanted to be in college and play for their respective program. People like to point to the one and done problem as the reason for the NBA's malice. The one and done problem got so bad that in 2017 there were 16 freshmen drafted in the first round of the NBA draft, which is over half of the full round. But the one and done problem in college basketball didn't start until 2007, when Greg Oden and Kevin Durant went to the NBA after their freshman year. This is likely because around the same time, the NBA stopped letting high schoolers make the jump straight to the league. Now more than ever, there are more ways to avoid the NCAA if you really need the money and want to go a different route to the league. You never had to go to the NCAA, you could have gone overseas. Now the NBA allows high schoolers to go straight to their development league, where they can make salaries, as we see with what top prospect Jalen Green did just a couple days ago. This is why I think it's ridiculous when people like Wendell Carter Jr.'s mother compare the NCAA to slavery. Nobody's forcing you to go to the NCAA. There are and always have been alternative routes to the NBA.
Dylan, care to respond?
Yeah, I'll respond. I think I'm definitely on the other side. I think Justin made some good points, but I think the fact you said that like college athletes, they're on scholarship. This is true, but like D3 athletes can't even get scholarships, and only 2% of high school athletes are offered scholarships to go to college. And according to I believe it's CBS, in 2017, the NCAA reached a financial milestone and they reported $1.1 billion in revenue. And I think if with college athletes, they're putting their bodies on the line. You see Kevin Ware's, horrific injury in March Madness in 2013. College athletes are getting paralyzed every season in football. I think that putting their bodies on the line for the entertainment of the fans and an industry that's making over $1 billion, I think they definitely deserve to get paid even a little bit. And on the other side, I was doing some research, and originally I was against college athletes getting paid. And one of the reasons I had is that only 2% of them eventually get drafted and go pro. But here's the problem with that, is that D1 athletes on average spend 35 hours per week on athletic activities during the season. And this leaves them, reminder, these are still college athletes. They're taking college level courses. So that leaves them no time to really study, or it makes it even harder to do well in those courses. And then they're also, apparently, D1 athletes spent 2% of their time per week at a job, which is equivalent to 3.4 hours and roughly $25 per week. And so if only 2% of these athletes are getting paid, then they'll have very little. And then if they don't get drafted, they'll have very little money, and they probably won't have done as well as they could at school. And so if they do get paid, then they have something to kind of lean back on and some extra money to help them stay afloat when they're years after college, when they're trying to find a job and kind of readjust to a new life without sports.
So, Dylan, you make a compelling argument here that only 2% of athletes are getting financial recognition for the vast amounts of time that they're spending on their craft, on sports. And I think that's a really good point. And it does mean that in some cases they can't get a normal job on their school campus. But if we're talking about stats and the fact that there's only a small number of people receiving scholarships, well, it's about the same number of people that would even be making money for their school programs. Like, you might not know this, but usually only basketball and football programs even make schools money. And so, that raises a question of equity. If the NCAA were to allow sponsorships for players, who would actually receive that money? It would be a very, very, very small number of players. It wouldn't be anyone on the baseball team. It wouldn't be anyone on the track team. It wouldn't be anyone on the polo team, the rowing team, because those sports aren't making the school money. And there's no reason, maybe a star in track or something would through like Instagram or something. But for the vast majority of the people, they're not going to receive a scholarship. They might even be in a worse off position, because at that point, schools could say to players, hey, you have the opportunity of getting money, but they know very well, and what the player doesn't know is that isn't a likely circumstance. And in the end, the player will get nothing. So the schools could sort of use that as a way to convince players of something that doesn't actually exist. So I think that's sort of a big worry. And then, really what I see on this issue is sort of somewhere between the two of you. I don't have a strong stance on whether college athletes should be able to receive payment. I'd probably say that we should keep the system as it is on that question, but there's a lot of other reform that we could do in the meantime. So, I think one part of that is holding schools accountable to actually providing their student athletes a level of education. As Justin said, players these days have a lot of opportunities to go directly to the league or go directly to sports if they join the G League, for example, in the NBA, and do that for a year or two before they go to the NBA. So the students who are actually showing at the school should be the ones, and they should be offered the opportunity to pursue education before they start their professional career, if that's something that they'll end up doing. So I think that's the first thing that schools should be held accountable for. I think there also should be more schools should also be held accountable in offering student athletes 4-year scholarships instead of just 1-year scholarships, because that means that players might push themselves to their max and get injured, worrying about receiving that scholarship money for another year. So a lot of scholarships are 4 years these days, but I think really all of them should be, because it just sets up a false situation for athletes that forces them to potentially break their bodies. And then finally, I think schools should maybe set aside a fund that could help players after they graduate, right? When it would actually be legally applicable for them to receive money. I think that would be one way to get around this. So those are just a few of my thoughts.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I'm not saying that I believe that all college athletes should get paid, like a salary of like $50,000 per year, but I agree. I think that they should get some financial support, like whether there be boosters and alumni that are willing to donate to a program specifically to give college athletes money. I think that to the extent, like the amount of time that they sacrifice themselves and their body to the college, to the sport, and to the fans, I think that they deserve a little bit in return.
Yeah. It's a challenging question for sure. Yeah.
Very challenging.
Okay, well, let's move on. Okay, folks, for our next segment, we'll be introducing you to some new sports that you can check out in all the free time that you have right now. Maybe you're bored with watching reruns from the 1980 Olympics. Well, we have an alternative for you here. These are some sports that you've probably never heard of, maybe you've never wanted to, but, well, we're going to force it down your throats right now. So we're going to be starting with Justin showing us some images.
Yes. All right, here we have netball, very popular in Australia. Some people say it's a worse version of basketball, and I would not disagree. It is in every way a worse version of basketball.
Hey, but Justin, let me stop you right there. Think about this.
Oh.
When you're playing basketball, people are always giving you praise if you can make a shot that's nothing but net. Aren't all these shots nothing but net?
Not necessarily, because they still hit the rim.
I hadn't thought about that before in all my time watching netball.
Yeah, I've spent a very extensive amount of time watching netball.
So do players shoot overhand or underhand?
Overhead. So
Okay.
it's just like basketball, except for like shooting a basketball.
It looks like a volleyball, though, not a basketball. Does it bounce the same way?
It kind of does, yeah.
Well, I think Dylan is just blown away by this concept, and why don't we move on?
Move on. Right.
Next, we have really what I think is one of the best sports in the world. It is wife carrying. Wife carrying originated in Finland. The first event was in 1992. And, I'll just jump right into some fun facts about this event. So, you don't actually have to be legally married to participate. So it may not be your wife that you're actually carrying. The course
That's good. Keep it open to everyone.
The course is about 250 meters with 2 dry obstacles and 1 wet. As you can see right here, there's some, I think, a wonderful mud pit that they have to trek through. You have to carry your wife for the entirety of the event, and the best part is that the winner brings home their prize of the wife's weight in beer.
Well, that'll make for a happy marriage for sure. Definitely.
Make for some great celebrations and a very happy marriage.
Well, innovative. Does this happen much in America?
Yes, it does. I'm actually talking about the North America competition in which you get $500. You get the wife's weight in beer and $500.
Wow. Where does this happen?
I've never heard of a more American thing in my life.
Where does this happen in America?
I am not quite sure.
Beats me, man.
Yeah, I mean, it puts a spin on challenge courses and on races. It's a good combination of everything, and as you pointed out, it really is an American sport with the prize being beer and everything. So yeah, checks all the right boxes.
Fantastic. Would recommend. But probably don't try this during quarantine, because then you have to be close to someone. So,
Well, if they're in your family, maybe it'll work out, but probably can't have an audience. And audience is the best part of all sports, as we say here in Second Take.
then if it's your family and you're carrying your wife, that can get into some sticky situations.
Sure.
Anyhow, why don't we go to our next sport?
Next sport, we have
I'll take the okay. Our next sport is you can see it takes place on a very steep hill, and these people are chasing after the prize, which is a big barrel of cheese. This sport, which I do believe originated in Europe, probably in the Germany or Austria area, all the competitors start at the top of a hill and then they roll a big barrel of cheese down it, and you have to sprint down the hill as fast as you can, and the first one to get to the cheese wins. So as you can see, there's a lot of tumbling and falling, and surprisingly not a whole lot of injuries, but it will make for a great event to watch.
this sounds amazing.
And very, very European. Yeah, I'm not
That's
surprised
cool.
at all they're doing this over there.
That really
Yeah. I think this could also make it big in America. I think people are potentially dumb enough not to realize there could be some injuries here, and try it out for the first time. And yeah, I also, though, to be fair, it's probably a fun sport. Lose track of everything else going on outside and just kind of let yourself roll down a nice grassy hill.
And the sources told me that the World Championship event take place in Britain.
exciting. If I wasn't injured right now, I'd be training for that.
And how do you train? I wonder.
Find a nice hill and
probably practice being dizzy or something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, shall we move on?
Yeah. Okay. Well, here we have polo. Kind of been around forever. It's one of those sports that was traditionally played by the elites, and now it's really only still played by people who have some type of money, because you need a horse and everything. But it's definitely dynamic. You got to be able to ride a horse, keep on a horse in some close contact with other horse riders, and also have the eye-hand coordination to hit a ball while on the horse. So definitely a lot going on. I think that the reason it hasn't caught on anywhere else is because it's hard to have access to all those different things, but definitely a lot going on.
Yeah, looks pretty interesting. You got some horses going. They got what they kind of look like. No, they don't.
What?
I was gonna say they kind of look like croquet mallets, but they don't.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little bit like that, and the horses also seem to be kind of miniature horses, so that probably makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah, that does.
Um,
How the game is played, like what they do.
Yeah, I think it's 2 goals. So 2 teams, you try to pass it back and forth. I kind of like soccer or hockey. It's just that now you're on a horse, which it's harder to control. So
fair enough.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Shall we move right on?
Okay, so this is called Pitaka, and it's obscure to Americans and maybe even some Europeans, but it's actually one of the most popular sports in Brazil, probably after football or soccer for us Americans. And so it's sort of a mix between badminton and volleyball, where you can sort of see this left of picture, the guy holding it up in his hand, this Pitaka, and it's basically like a hand shuttlecock. So like badminton, but without a racket, you hit it with your hand back and forth. It's usually played in teams of 2 and it's sort of tournament style. And I've actually played it myself. I totally recommend it. It's very fun, very dynamic. You get a good workout playing it. And yeah, it's a cool sport.
So there's only one of the. Oh, never mind.
Yeah. So unlike volleyball, you can't necessarily pass it back to each other traditionally. Yeah. So it's more like I think like badminton also. Yeah, you just hit it back once, but you have 2 people to cover the floor.
I see. That does sound pretty cool.
Yeah. So I think we definitely need to get an American federation of this going at some point.
Yeah, I was a big fan of the badminton back in my prime when I was 25.
Now, interestingly enough, there's actually a European version called Indica that's played well in Europe, and that even has sort of a yearly European championship. So it has caught on in some other countries as well.
Maybe we should get it going here.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Heck yeah, man. All right, next one. So this next sport is called extreme ironing, which is, as you can imagine, ironing under extreme conditions. Here we've got people ironing while skydiving, which I think is just absolutely fabulous. I've never seen anything like it anywhere ever before, and I think it's something we should bring to the mainstream and have everybody do.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing.
I mean, this might even be productive, right? Like, you're under a lot of pressure in the sky. You're probably performing better than you normally would. Why not get some work done when you're falling from 40,000 feet or whatever?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Incredible is the word. Do you know where else they might do some of this extreme irony?
I don't know.
I would say
Maybe inside a volcano, underwater, anything like that.
Oh, yes. We can. I've seen pictures of that it being done underwater. I've seen it done on top of a car. It's
Wow.
just anywhere that might pose an extreme environment.
Okay, well, stay safe while you're ironing. Okay, well, I think that ends our little segment on extreme and obscure sports. Hopefully you learned a little bit something. Hopefully you learned something you can share with your family, and maybe you want to go now watch some clips on the old YouTube. Okay, folks, our last session on our last episode is a special one. You might have heard of this guy. He may have been in your TV during any number of Olympic Games or World Championships. His name is Matthew Centrowitz. He's the Olympic champion in the 1,500 meters for the United States. He can run a mile faster than pretty much anyone in the world. And he actually lives right here in Portland, Oregon, if that's where you're based. Well, we had the opportunity to sit down with Mr. Centrowitz remotely, of course, and we've asked him a couple of questions about how he's staying sane during the coronavirus and what he's up to maybe on the video game console during this time. So let's hit the questions.
So Matthew, our first question for you is, how have things changed for you schedule-wise since the pandemic hit?
Surprisingly, things have not changed so much since the pandemic hit. I still go about most of my day with working out twice a day, at least once, going outside for my run. I get my nap still in, and the only thing that has really changed is an up of my video game playing. So that was what I would say is probably the biggest change. But other than that, like as a professional runner, a lot of the time you're inside, kind of staying off your feet, recovering in between workouts and runs. So I'm not really doing a lot of traveling this time of year as we'd be at training camp. But being here now at my house, it's kind of been like training camp, really, just staying inside and staying away from other teammates. And maybe just being a little bit more clean, washing my hands a little extra, but that's it.
Matthew, our second question for you is, what is one common misconception people have about you or the life of a professional athlete?
A common misconception people have about a professional athlete is that a lot of our day, we don't do much. And I think, especially having like a lot of my family members come visit for the holidays, they see really quick that is far from the truth. Between the morning runs, the workouts in the morning, how long they take, and then obviously having a secondary run, massages, mandatory naps. Most of our days actually filled around, obviously, track and field and running. So if we're not actually exercising or working out or running, we are kind of recovering in between and doing everything we can so our legs are fresh and healthy. So whether it's not a massage, it could be a Normatec boots, recovery boots, getting treatment, lifting and core. That's another thing, that we do on the days that we don't work out. So I would say it's a 24/7 job. It's not just when you step to the track and you're done, your day's done. It goes on for the rest of the day. So
Finally, Matthew, I think the fans all want to know, how likely is it that you call it quits in this little running thing you have going on and start an esports career?
it's very likely that when my running career comes to an end, that I will pursue a career in esports. For number one, there's more money in that industry than track and field. But no, as I said earlier, I enjoy video games. Right now, I get my fix playing Call of Duty. And yeah, that helps pass the time. It also stays in touch with a lot of close friends. And yeah, I enjoy and get my competitive fix from these video games. So you would think I would be a lot better than I really am playing the amount of hours. But if maybe I solely concentrate even more hours somehow, I don't know if that's possible, but somehow play even more hours of it, then maybe I could see myself being an amateur.
Well, folks, all good things do come to an end, and this signals the end of our special two-part series, Second Take, the sporty conversation you never knew you needed. Right from the studios of CGS ESPN, we hope you've enjoyed your time with us, and we look forward to hearing all about how you, our loyal viewers, are staying active during the current sports void. Whether you're organizing familial sessions of extreme ironing, setting up a Zoom-based game of horse with your beloved work colleagues, or simply checking LeBron's TikTok endlessly, we hope you found meaning in the topics we reviewed and the opinions we shared. And so from Dylan George, Justin Baymail, our great crew, this is Britton Masbach signing off from Portland, Oregon. And as we always say, when you play ball, leave it all. Thank you and good night.